Most people don't wake up one morning and decide to lose themselves. It happens quietly. One compromise at a time. One excuse that feels reasonable. One day you say, I'll fix it later, and later slowly becomes your lifestyle. You're still breathing, still moving, still busy. But something inside you knows the truth. You are not who you could be. You are not who you promised yourself you would become. There comes a moment in life when distraction stops working, when noise can't drown out that inner voice anymore, when success on the outside no longer compensates for the dissatisfaction within. That moment is uncomfortable, but it is also powerful because it carries a message: what built your current life is no longer enough to build your next one. Rebuilding yourself is not about starting over from nothing. It is about starting again from experience. It is about taking what life has taught you through failure, delay, and disappointment, and using it with intention instead of regret. The question is not whether you've been knocked down. Everyone has. The real question is whether you are willing to stand up with greater clarity than before. Today is not about motivation. It is about decision. A decision to stop drifting. A decision to stop waiting. A decision to become the architect of your own direction. Because the most important structure you will ever rebuild is not around you, it is within you. Personal responsibility is the moment a person stops waiting for life to change and decides to change themselves. It is the quiet but powerful realization that where you are today is largely the result of choices you have made, habits you have practiced, and standards you have accepted over time. This idea can feel uncomfortable at first because it removes the convenience of blame. It means your past cannot be fixed by excuses and your future cannot be handed to you by luck. But within that discomfort lies freedom, because the same force that shaped your current life can reshape it again. When you accept responsibility, you stop giving external conditions control over your emotions and decisions. The weather, the economy, your background, and other people may influence you, but they no longer define you. You begin to understand that while you cannot control everything that happens to you, you can always control your response. That response, repeated daily, becomes character. Character determines direction. Direction determines destination. Personal responsibility also demands honesty. It asks you to look at your results and trace them back to your action. If progress is missing, the question is not why is life unfair, but what skills have I neglected? What disciplines have I avoided? What promises have I failed to keep to myself? This is not about self-criticism. It is about self-leadership. Leaders do not complain about the wind. They adjust the sails. Once responsibility is accepted, excuses lose their appeal. Complaints start to feel expensive because you realize they cost you time, energy, and growth. Instead of saying, I don't have time, you start asking, what am I doing with the time I have? Instead of saying, I'm not ready, you ask, what must I learn to be ready? That shift in thinking changes behavior, and behavior changes outcomes. Taking responsibility also builds confidence. Every time you keep a commitment, no matter how small, you send yourself a message that you can be trusted. That trust compounds. You begin to rely less on motivation and more on principle. You stop waiting for permission and start acting with intention. Life stops happening to you and starts responding to you. Self-awareness is the discipline of seeing yourself clearly, without illusion and without unnecessary harshness. It begins when you stop measuring your life by intentions and start measuring it by results. Many people live with a gap between who they believe they are and how they actually behave, and that gap quietly determines the quality of their future. Until you are willing to look into that gap, growth remains accidental rather than intentional. True self-awareness requires observation before judgment. It means noticing how you speak when things go wrong, how you spend your free time, how you react when challenged, and how consistent you are when no one is watching. These small, ordinary behaviors reveal more about your direction than your goals ever will. What you repeatedly do is what you are becoming, whether you like it or not. Awareness brings those patterns into the light. This process often feels uncomfortable because it strips away comforting stories. It challenges the habit of saying, that's just how I am, or that's how life works. Instead, it asks tougher questions. Why do certain situations trigger you? Why do you delay the work you know matters? Why do you repeat decisions that lead to the same disappointment? These questions are not meant to shame you, but to wake you up. You cannot correct what you refuse to confront. Self-awareness also reveals strengths, not just weaknesses. When you pay attention, you discover moments where you acted with discipline, courage, or patience, even under pressure. Those moments are clues. They show you what you are capable of when you operate at a higher standard. Growth is not only about fixing flaws, it is about consciously using your strengths instead of wasting them through neglect or distraction. As awareness deepens, responsibility naturally follows. You stop blaming mood, circumstances, or other people for patterns that are clearly yours. You realize that improvement is not about dramatic personality changes, but about deliberate adjustments. A better morning routine, a more thoughtful response, a clearer boundary, a wiser use of time. Small changes become possible because the truth is now visible. Without self-awareness, effort is scattered and progress is slow. With it, every action becomes more precise. You begin to act with intention instead of impulse, choice instead of habit, and clarity instead of confusion. Daily discipline is the quiet structure that holds a rebuilt life together. It is the decision to do what needs to be done, even when emotions disagree and motivation is absent. Most people wait to feel inspired before they act, but discipline reverses that order. Action comes first and confidence follows. What you do consistently matters far more than what you do occasionally, because life rewards patterns, not intentions. Discipline is often misunderstood as restriction, but in reality, it is the pathway to freedom. When you control your habits, you control your direction. A person who disciplines their time, energy, and focus is no longer at the mercy of distraction or impulse. Each small, disciplined action may seem insignificant in the moment, but over time, those actions accumulate into visible strength, competence, and self-respect. The power of daily discipline lies in its simplicity. It does not demand heroic effort or dramatic change. It asks for consistency in ordinary things. Reading a few pages every day compounds into knowledge. Exercising briefly but regularly builds stamina. Showing up on time, finishing what you start, and keeping promises to yourself create a foundation of reliability. These small acts shape identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, and that belief influences every area of life. Discipline also trains the mind to tolerate discomfort without retreating. Growth always involves resistance, whether it is mental fatigue, boredom, or fear. When you practice discipline daily, you learn that discomfort is temporary and manageable. You stop interpreting difficulty as a signal to quit and start seeing it as a sign that progress is being made. This shift builds resilience, which is essential for long-term success. Without discipline, goals remain wishes and plans remain theories. Talent becomes inconsistent and potential stays locked away. With discipline, effort becomes organized and purposeful. You waste less energy starting over because you never fully stop. Momentum replaces struggle, and progress becomes predictable rather than accidental. Daily discipline does not promise instant results, but it guarantees direction. It aligns your actions with your values and your future with your standards. Over time, the person you are rebuilding becomes visible, not through grand declarations, but through the quiet evidence of what you do every day. Learning and growth are the engines that drive long-term change, because life rarely improves beyond the level of understanding you operate from. When you stop learning, you stop expanding your options, and when your options shrink, so does your future. Every challenge you face is either made heavier or lighter by what you know, how you think, and how willing you are to adapt. Investing in your mind is one of the few efforts that pays dividends in every area of life. Knowledge sharpens judgment, improves decision-making, and increases confidence without arrogance. A person who's committed to learning begins to see problems differently. Obstacles turn into puzzles instead of threats, and mistakes become lessons instead of labels. Growth starts internally, long before it shows up as visible success. Learning is not limited to formal education or titles. It happens through reading, listening, observing, and reflecting. It happens when you seek feedback instead of avoiding it, and when you ask questions instead of defending your position. Each new idea you absorb slightly reshapes your perspective, and perspective determines how you interpret reality. Change your perspective, and you change the range of actions available to you. Personal growth also requires humility. You must accept that what got you here may not get you where you want to go. This awareness creates hunger rather than insecurity. Instead of pretending to know everything, you become curious. Instead of protecting your ego, you protect your progress. Growth accelerates the moment learning becomes a daily habit rather than an occasional event. As you grow, your standards naturally rise. You begin to recognize inefficiency, poor habits, and unproductive thinking more quickly. This awareness saves time and reduces repeated mistakes. You stop relearning the same painful lessons because wisdom has replaced trial and error. Growth shortens the distance between decision and result. Learning also strengthens self-reliance. The more skills you develop, the less dependent you become on luck or approval. You gain the ability to adjust when circumstances change because your value is no longer tied to a single role or condition. Growth makes you adaptable, and adaptability is one of the most valuable assets in an unpredictable world. When learning becomes continuous, life stops feeling stagnant. Progress becomes part of your identity, and improvement becomes a natural expectation rather than a distant hope. Letting go of the old is one of the most difficult but necessary parts of rebuilding yourself because growth and attachment cannot occupy the same space. Many people attempt to change their future while holding tightly to past habits, beliefs, and identities that were formed under different conditions. What once protected you or helped you survive may now be limiting your progress, but familiarity often disguises itself as comfort. The past has a subtle power. Old routines feel natural, old excuses feel reasonable, and old self-images feel safe, even when they produce results you no longer want. Letting go requires honesty about what is no longer working. It means recognizing that certain habits drain energy instead of building it, certain beliefs shrink possibility instead of expanding it, and certain relationships reinforce versions of you that you are trying to outgrow. This awareness is not rejection of your past, it is respect for your future. Releasing the old often feels like loss because it creates a temporary gap between who you were and who you are becoming. In that space, uncertainty appears. You may feel less confident before you feel stronger, less certain before you feel clear. This is natural. Growth always involves a period where the old identity dissolves before the new one fully forms. The mistake is returning to the familiar, simply to escape discomfort. Letting go also means forgiving yourself. Carrying guilt, regret, or resentment anchors you to yesterday's mistakes. Forgiveness does not erase responsibility, but it frees your energy for better decisions. When you release the need to punish yourself for what you didn't know or couldn't do before, you create room for wiser action now. This process also requires boundaries. Some environments and influences reinforce patterns you are trying to break. Stepping away from them may feel lonely at first, but staying would cost you more in the long run. Growth often changes your circle before it changes your circumstances, and that shift is part of the rebuilding process. When you let go of what no longer serves you, you reduce internal resistance. Energy that was once spent maintaining outdated habits and stories becomes available for progress. The weight lifts, not because life becomes easier, but because you are no longer carrying what was never meant to come with you. Vision and purpose give rebuilding its direction because effort without direction eventually turns into exhaustion. When you lack a clear sense of where you are going, even hard work feels heavy and confusing. You may stay busy, but progress feels uncertain. Vision answers the question of who you are becoming, while purpose answers why that transformation matters. Together they turn struggle into meaning. A clear vision begins internally. It is not borrowed from other people's expectations or shaped by comparison. It is formed by honest reflection on values, potential, and desire. Contribution. Vision does not need to be perfectly defined, but it must be sincere. It provides a mental picture that pulls you forward, especially during moments of doubt. When you know what you are aiming for, decisions become easier because you measure choices against direction rather than emotion. Purpose adds emotional weight to vision. It connects daily effort to something larger than comfort or convenience. Without purpose, rebuilding feels like punishment. With purpose, difficulty feels worthwhile. Purpose allows you to endure delay, resist distraction, and persist when results are slow. It transforms discipline from obligation into commitment because you understand what is at stake if you quit. Vision and purpose also shape priorities. They force you to distinguish between what is urgent and what is important. Time becomes more valuable because you see it as a resource tied to your future, not something to be spent carelessly. You begin to protect your energy, choose your influences more carefully, and say no without guilt to things that pull you off course. As vision becomes clear, confidence grows. You stop reacting to life and start responding with intention. Setbacks no longer feel like verdicts on your worth. They become feedback along the path. Purpose anchors you during uncertainty, reminding you that confusion is temporary but direction remains. Vision also evolves as you rebuild. Growth refines understanding. What mattered at one stage may expand or deepen at another. This flexibility is not inconsistency. It is maturity. Purpose is not about clinging to a rigid future, but about staying aligned with what gives your effort meaning. When vision and purpose guide rebuilding, progress feels connected rather than random. Each step, no matter how small, carries a sense of alignment. And effort begins to feel less like survival and more like intentional creation of a life that reflects who you are becoming. As we come to the close of this message, remember that rebuilding yourself is not a dramatic event reserved for perfect timing or ideal circumstances. It is a series of conscious decisions made when no one is watching and applause is absent. It begins the moment you accept responsibility for your direction, become aware of who you are today, and commit to disciplined action that aligns with who you want to become. Every lesson you learn, every habit you refine, and every outdated belief you release strengthens the foundation of your future. Rebuilding is not about becoming someone else. It is about returning to your potential with greater wisdom and intention. Progress may feel slow at times, but consistency gives it power. You will not always feel confident, but clarity will grow as long as you keep moving forward. What matters most is not perfection, but persistence guided by purpose. When vision leads your effort, setbacks become lessons and effort becomes meaningful. I wish you the courage to take responsibility, the patience to grow, and the discipline to stay committed even when results are delayed. May you trust the process, honor your progress, and believe in the value of becoming better than yesterday. Good luck on your journey of rebuilding yourself, and thank you for your time, your attention, and the opportunity to share this message with you.